Welcome back to the deep dive. You give us the sources, the articles, the notes, the research, and we give you the story behind them.
And today, wow, we're jumping into the world of Portuguese mathematics education.
Which I know might not sound like a thriller, but we're looking at a project that literally turns high school algebra into a dramatic, high-stakes rescue mission.
We're dissecting the documents behind a pedagogical tool called O Disser de Cordero.
Which translates to what exactly?
Something like the lamb's downfall or the misfortune of the lamb. And this is just one piece of a much bigger educational project, CSI Matematica.
CSI as in crime scene investigation.
Almost. Calculus sub investigate under capulation under investigation.
I love it already. So our mission today is to really get into the origin of this thing because it was apparently triggered by a real moment of a student just completely losing it.
It was. And we're going to see how the author, Professor Sergio Machado, took that raw frustration and engineered it into a solvable math problem.
He made abstract concepts like parabolas habitable. That's the word they use.
And just so we're clear, this is all the work of Professor Sergio Machado. His whole philosophy is about turning teaching practices into these small, engaging stories where math is the hero.
Okay, so let's start there. The origin story. Because it really all comes down to truly listening to your students.
It does. The whole thing was sparked by one student's frustration. Her name was Sofia Marrafa.
And she was actually the inspiration for a previous resource, wasn't she?
That's right, yeah. A notable historia de caso notable. The remarkable story of a remarkable case.
So what was her issue this time?
She was just hitting a wall, trying to study equations of degree and visualize what they actually looked like as graphs, parabolas, hyperbolas. The abstraction was just defeating her.
And then comes the anecdote that changes everything.
She tells the professor she feels like throwing her notebook right out the window.
Which, I mean, we've all been there. But most teachers would just say, oh, don't worry, you'll get it.
But he saw something deeper. He realized she didn't want to get rid of the paper. She wanted to throw the mathematics itself away, that abstract, frustrating thing.
And that idea became the seed for this whole project.
Exactly. The goal wasn't to dumb it down, but to decomplicate it. Decomplicar, as he puts it.
So he takes this incredibly negative feeling, this frustration.
And he turns it into an origo, into plot. The difficulty itself becomes the action, the movement of the story.
It's such a brilliant way to reframe it. You stop fighting the feeling and you make it the engine.
Right. But the final resource wasn't actually named after her, which is interesting.
No, it was applied in a different class with a student named Filipe Cordeiro.
So the title shifted from O Disser de Marrafa's downfall to the one we have now, O Disser de Cordero, the lamb's downfall.
And that shift really brings us to the next big idea. Using the actual classroom life as the plot for the math problem.
Yes, this isn't just a gimmick. He intentionally brings his student by name into the problems. He makes them stakeholders. The narrative is the test.
So tell us about the plot. What's the story here?
Well, it's pretty dramatic. The character, Filipe Cordeiro, is completely fed up with math. He's supported by his skeptical friends, and he climbs to the top of the tallest building in Viseu.
And he's a package with him.
He does. It's labeled a matematica, the mathematics. And he's going to literally throw the entire discipline out the window forever.
So the rest of the class has to save their favorite subject.
Yeah.
But this is where it gets really clever because he starts weaving in their actual real-life situations into the rescue.
Exactly. The source documents are very specific about this. He positions the different student groups on the ground below, ready to make the catch, and their positions are based on their real circumstances.
Give us an example.
Okay, so one student at the time was on crutches. That would naturally affect how they could participate. But more specifically, the documents say that Daniel Souza's group was placed closest to the building.
And why them?
Because Daniel actually had a knee problem. So this real-life limitation becomes a narrative advantage. It's the reason his group is in the prime position.
Okay, I have to stop you there because this is fascinating. When you take a student's actual physical struggle, like a knee injury, and put it into a graded test, does that cross a line?
It's a really good question. You could see it as trivializing their issue.
Or making them feel singled out.
Right. But the way it's framed, it feels more like validation. It's not mocking them. It's saying, your reality is part of this story. Your constraint is now a key plot point. Daniel's bad knee makes his group the first responders. His reality is essential.
It's a kind of radical personalization, I get it.
Yeah.
And the other students' realities are folded in too.
Yep. Francisca Antun's group, who maybe were a bit distracted on their phones. They're positioned a little further back.
Naturally.
And then you have the groups that are really panicked. Sofia Tenrero's group is running, and Rafael Silva's group is running the absolute fastest because they're terrified of losing their favorite subject.
So their positions on the ground directly relate to the math problem they're about to solve. It's this idea that when math is, as he says, contaminated by real life, it becomes habitable.
The difficulty doesn't go away. It just becomes traversable. You're given a path.
Okay, so let's walk that path. Let's get to the actual mathematical framework. How does this story translate into a quadratic equation test?
So the core concept is that the flight path of a mathematica is a parabola. It's governed by a quadratic function, where 5x is the height of the notebook off the ground, and 6Lers is how far it's traveled horizontally from the building.
Precisely. And the test gives the students 4 different functions to choose from. They have to match the correct function to the correct rescue group.
Let me see them here. Okay, we've got 5x and its algebra 5 by 2 plus 6x plus 21, 5 by mx plus sin x plus 20 checks, 5 algebra 5 by 2, 5, plus 6x plus 20 checks, and 5 minus 5 by 2 plus 6x plus 21, and f5x equals 0 to of 3 by 2 plus 6x plus 21.
They look almost identical, don't they?
They do. They all have the plus 6x and the plus 20. The only thing that's different is that first number, the coefficient in front of the x squared.
And that's the entire story right there, that a value.
The a value dictates the shape of the parabola, how wide or narrow it is. Exactly. And since it's falling, they're all negative, so the parabola opens downward. But the magnitude of that number, how big it is, ignoring the negative sign, determines how steep the fall is.
So a bigger number, like the -5 in the second function, means a much steeper, faster drop.
A very narrow parabola. And a smaller number, like the -0.3, means a much slower, shallower descent. A wide, gentle arc.
So students have to use the story to figure it out. Rafael Silva's group, who ran the furthest, must be expecting the slowest fall, the one that travels the farthest horizontally.
Which means they'd be looking for the function with the smallest absolute a value.
But wait, looking at the source, it's actually Daniel Souza's group, the one with the knee injury, assigned to the shallowest parabola, 3 about them with the ADAN 3 through 10ths.
Right, because that shallow arc means it doesn't travel very far horizontally before it starts coming down. It lands closer to the building, which is exactly where they were positioned.
Ah, I see. So they're not just mapping speed, they're mapping landing zones. A steep drop from 50 as a Begar with a 5-fire would hit the ground very close to the building.
Exactly. The narrative logic is embedded right into the constants of the function.
And what about the other parts of the function? The test guides them through that, too.
It does. The very first question is, what does that number 20 at the end of every function represent?
That's the constant term, the C value. It's the y-intercept.
In graphical terms, yes, but in the story,
It's the starting height, the height of the building in Visu, 20 meters.
it's an easy point, but it immediately anchors the abstract equation to a physical place.
And they also have to calculate how far away Rafael Silva's group was.
Which means they need to find the roots of the function. They have to solve for 4x.
The classic quadratic formula practice. They're finding the x-intercepts, which is literally where the math hits the ground.
And by tying it to Raphael's group, they understand they're calculating the maximum possible horizontal distance before the subject is lost forever.
And the final question just ties it all up perfectly. The story confirms that a Mathematica landed right on Daniel Souza's head.
Poor Daniel.
Right. And with that information, they have to calculate the exact maximum height the math reached on its journey.
This is just brilliant. Because if it landed on Daniel, they now know for sure that his function, 5,3 Bazalar, is the correct one. And to find the maximum height.
You have to find the vertex of that specific parabola.
Yes. The vertex gives you the maximum E value, which is the peak height, and the X value where it happened. It forces them to use the vertex formula to solve a life or death classroom crisis.
It's a master class in giving emotion a mathematical structure.
And this isn't just a one-off. Let's zoom out a bit and talk about the bigger project this all belongs to, the CSI Mathematica.
Right, calculation under investigation.
This is a huge effort to meet the national curriculum's need for more than just rote calculation. They want problem-solving, investigation, real practice.
And the goal is to make math feel, what, light and pleasant.
Light, pleasant, and full of attractions. The whole idea is sharing these small, replicable teaching stories.
It really changes the role of the teacher, doesn't it? They're not just a source of answers anymore.
Not at all. Professor Machado calls the teacher an incentivizer, an explorer who is actively trying to show students why this science is actually necessary in their lives.
This goes back to his personal philosophy, which I love. He says he always preferred doubt over knowing.
And that's the engine of this whole thing. That preference for doubt means he's willing to take risks to do research in his own classroom.
To leave a new pedagogical footprint. Instead of just giving them a perfect, finished equation, the knowing, he creates a scenario filled with doubt that they have to investigate.
It's active creation instead of passive consumption.
And he's applied this to way more than just quadratic equations. Let's talk about some of the other narrative devices he's created.
Oh, the scope is amazing. You've got zero, oh, agente, irrational.
So 0, pi, the irrational agent.
Think James Bond meets mathematics. It's got Sherlock Holmes and this agent, 0, pi, solving a mystery at the Museum of Mathematical Challenges. It's a way to give abstract concepts like irrational numbers a personality.
That's incredible. What else?
There's one called Deus vs. Mathema, God versus Math.
Okay, that sounds intense.
It's a professor challenging a really demotivated student to find a single place in the world where math doesn't exist.
Which forces the student to see it everywhere.
Exactly. And there's even one for basic first-degree equations called A Guerra dos Tornos, the War of the Turnings. It uses dragons, mages, kings, all to solve a simple equation.
He's basically building a whole mathematical mythology.
He is. And it doesn't just stay on the page. This is what's really amazing. The project has a dramatic complement. They adapt these stories into theater pieces.
They put on math plays.
They put on math plays. The idea is that theater is the ultimate art form. It brings together literature, movement, and yes, even mathematics.
So the students are literally embodying the parabola, or acting out the search for the root of an equation.
Can you imagine how much more deeply you'd understand a concept if you had to physically perform it on a stage? It makes it unforgettable.
It turns the classroom into a lab and a stage at the same time. So if we bring this all together, what's the key takeaway? How does this actually work?
It's all about creating anticipation. You start with a compelling context, a hook Filipe Cordeiro on the roof. You use characters the students actually know themselves and their friends.
And suddenly the obstacle, the math problem, becomes personal and urgent.
Yes. The story creates this motivational push that carries them through the difficult algebra.
That makes so much sense. I think the ultimate lesson from Professor Machado here is that sometimes before you can ask a student to solve an equation, you have to stop them from throwing the notebook out the window first.
And it's about enjoying what he calls the garden beyond the door, the world where math lives, instead of just getting frustrated with the technical difficulty of the lock.
It's just proof that even the most abstract ideas can be modeled by story and by reality.
It really makes the knowledge stick.
Yeah. So for you, listening right now, think about that one problem in your life, that mathematical, logistical, or even emotional challenge that you just wish you could throw out the window. If you had to turn it into a dramatic rescue plot with your friends and colleagues as the characters, what would you call that story, and what function would govern its downfall? We'll leave you with that to think about.